Hello, and welcome to episode 47 of the Wine Educate podcast, where we explore WSET education, study tips, and practical advice for wine enthusiasts and professionals. I got in my car today, and the thermostat said 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So for my European folks, that's about 44 degrees Celsius. That's hot. It's hot. As you know, I live here in New Orleans, Louisiana. It is June, beginning of June, and summer is here. It is set in. We are in for 3+ months of very hot days in the 90s. And then if you get into your hot car after it's been sitting out in the sun, well, that's just warmed right up and you're well north of 100. Sometimes 115, 120. Anyway, that's really hot. So the episode today, I wanted to focus on wine and heat damage. So this, in my city, is a very real problem. And you may not live in areas that get quite so hot, but heat damage can show up in sneaky places. So we're going to cover this. We're going to talk about where the heat damage could happen, what it could do to your wine, possibly how to prevent this from happening, because it's summer and I don't want you to get damaged wine, right? Heat damage. So for WSET, we talk about the proper storage of wine. Wine should be stored away from direct sunlight because the sunlight damages it. Should be stored on its side if it has a cork in it to keep that cork wet so it doesn't dry out and shrivel up and let oxygen in. And the temperature should be a cool, constant temperature. If a wine gets too hot, it can get damaged pretty quickly. So it doesn't have to be, oh, it was stored in this warm place for 3 months and now it's damaged. It could take an hour or two to damage a bottle of wine. I'll give you a somewhat tragic example. It happens more than it should. Over the many years that my husband has been a wine store owner, he has received deliveries in the middle of a New Orleans summer. And he'll place that order and then wait for the delivery for the next day and get more and more agitated as the day goes on. Because the longer it takes you to get your delivery on that day, it means that it's been sitting on that truck the whole time. And many of these trucks are not climate controlled. It is expensive to get a climate controlled van, so a lot of the delivery vans are not. So then if that delivery van rolls in around 3 o'clock, by this time he's pacing the floor. He's really worried about his wines. And the wines get delivered, and you put your hand on the case, and it's a cardboard case, and it's warm. And you open up the case, pull out a bottle, put your hand on the glass. It's warm. I mean, that truck was driving around all morning with your order on it, and the wines are getting warmer and warmer. And in some instances, you'll be able to see that the cork has even started to push out a little bit, and the wine is starting to seep out the side. So heat damage, it doesn't take all that long. And now there's a big question mark about the wine. Is this wine still good? Did it get enough heat damage to damage the flavors, to produce cooked aromas and flavors? Now that the cork is compromised, it's going to let oxygen in, and so on and so forth. It is not good. You do not want this to happen to your wine. And in many instances, if this has happened, Jim will just send it right back. He'll say, I'm sorry, this wine has been heat damaged. I'm not accepting it. Because then he'd have to put a heat damaged wine on his shelf, and nobody wants that. You want to make sure your wine is in good shape. Another example of how a wine could get damaged, possibly in a restaurant, if it was stored somewhere close to a heat source. Sometimes wine gets stored on top of the refrigerator, and that's not a really good thing because that refrigerator gets pretty warm, and then the wine's going to get warm as well. In a restaurant with a kitchen, you have to make sure that the wine is not stored anywhere near that. It could be that it's close to a window or a light source. Not just the light itself, but the heat from the light can heat up that bottle and damage it. And how is this relevant for you all when you go to the grocery store or even when you order your wines online? So let's start with that. There are many wine clubs out there. You get your wine shipped to your door. It's very convenient. And lots of these vineyards and wine clubs will actively refuse to ship the wine during the summer months. I'm convinced that's why we see this dip in the fall when we should not be seeing a dip. It's that everyone's wine deliveries have been released and now everyone's living room is full of boxes of wine because it's cool enough to ship it. If you have a wine membership, I'm sure that the company has a policy about this. They have to, and will not ship during the warmest parts of the year. If you're nervous about this, maybe it's shipping, but the day got pretty hot. Just make sure you have some way of tracking your delivery and find out if someone can pick it up for you, or do what Nancy and I did recently. Have it just send to the UPS office. We know that it's air conditioned in there. And when it was convenient for us, we just went and scooped up our little tasting kit. We didn't want to risk that sitting on Nancy's front porch for a couple hours and getting hot and damaging those samples. And here's a big one that folks don't think about so much. But because heat damage can happen in such a short period of time, you need to be mindful even when you go shopping for your wine. Say you're out and about and you're running your errands and you pop into the wine store and you pick up a couple bottles, you put them in the back seat, and then you go to the grocery store and then you pick up your dry cleaning and so on and so forth. Well, it's fine when you're in the car and the air conditioning's on, but when you leave the car, it's going to heat up really fast. And my advice for you when you buy wines and it's a warm day is treat it like you just bought a side of salmon. If you just bought a beautiful side of salmon, it is so delicate and perishable. You're going to do one of two things. You're either going to have an ice chest in your trunk. Believe me, this is a common thing. Lots of New Orleanians have this in their trunk, so that you can put it in there and it's going to be temperature controlled until you get home. Or you take it right home. You take it right home, get it in the fridge, safe and happy where it belongs so it won't get damaged. I would like for you to think about your wine purchases in the same way. Take your wine home. Don't leave it in the car. Don't let it get hot. Wine is delicate, right? This is why we have all these parameters of how it should be stored and treated, and you don't want to in any way damage those beautiful aromas and flavors by leaving them in the heat for a couple of hours. All right, that was my PSA for the day. I hope that was helpful to you, and maybe now you're going to be one of these people that rolls around with an ice chest in your trunk. Welcome to our tribe. And if you have any wine questions for me, on the newsletter, there is a link to leave a voice question, okay? It's in the podcast section. Just click on that and record your question. I would love to feature you on the podcast and find out what questions you have. If you still need to sign up for the newsletter, go to wineeducate.com, and there is a green button at the top that says newsletter sign up, and you know what to do. Take it from there. It's the one stop for all the info from Wine Educate. I don't like to have it all in these different areas. It's got the Taste That series for you, upcoming classes, and soon the trip information. Please leave me a question. I would love to hear from you. All right. Have a great weekend. See you next week.